The NBA regular season started in October. They've played 78 or 79 games apiece right now. 6 days left in the regular season, and still an opportunity for savvy bettors to make a profit. I'm not hanging up on this season yet. I hope you're not either. I know the playoffs start next week, but there's money to be made in games 79, 80, 81, and 82 of the NBA campaign for all of these teams. Let's break it down with today's Teddy's Tips, powered by WagerTalk. And I'm going to start with this, man. I've been running bad the last couple of days. Who we had the other? Oh, I had not Memphis, Orlando. Desmond Bane plays for Orlando this year. I had Orlando against New Orleans the other night. Desmond Bane, who has hit 92% full season at the free throw line, number 2 in the NBA, 1 of 2, and then 1 of 2 again. And of course, what happens? They fail to cover by a hook. That's the last 10 seconds. You get Bane to the line like bing, bing. Nope, not this time. And you lose by half a point. Those are frustrating when Bane misses 2. And then, of course, I had Michigan last night. They lost by a half point against the spread. The overtime loss in an under. It happens. What do we do when you run bad for a couple of days, when you get frustrated? We breathe. You take a moment to swear at whoever you want to swear at, and you get back to work. That's the nature of what we do. So let's get back to work with today's Wise Guy totals. Yesterday, money came in on the under, was not very good. 1 and 3 with the 4 plays that Wise Guy money came to the under. And let me make this very clear, because I got a comment yesterday that I thought was worth, and thank you guys for all the comments, for the likes, for the follows. Really, the comments make all the difference, and I do my best to respond to all of them when I can. But we had a comment yesterday talking about the totals, or the Wise Guy saying, well, you never said the Wise Guy plays can lose. Wise Guy plays can lose. Wise Guy plays will lose. Long term, Wise Guy plays, you expect him to lose 45% plus. Very happy winning 11 out of 20 long term. I'm happy winning 11 out of 20 long term. You need to be happy winning 11 out of 20 long term, or this isn't going to be a long term gig for you when it comes to betting on sports. So, no, the Wise Guy plays do not all win. But there's an argument, and I believe it's valid, that the Wise Guy totals, these overnight totals, there's positive expectation there if you're interested. So it's not a guarantee. It's not a lock. It's who the money moved, where the Wise Guy saw value last night. And I've seen it again, 28 years in Las Vegas. I've seen in particular these overnight totals are worth paying attention to. That's why I talk about it on Teddy's Tips every day. So 3 Wise Guy totals in play for today that have all stood out for me. We've seen the Bulls and the Wizards, which was sitting 248 last night. Now I'm seeing 251 out there this morning. So over between 2 teams that aren't playing any defense whatsoever right now. Although when I'm going to talk about this game a little bit more, unfortunately, but nobody's playing for either team. It's really a very limited roster for Chicago and Washington. We have seen over money. No one's expecting any defense. They are expecting pace. Miami, Toronto, also over money in that one, as low as 238 last night, as high as 241 right now as we speak. Certainly the Heat are a team that, they've been, 4-1 of the over last 5, 8-2 of the over last 10. All they do is play with pace. Toronto doesn't. So the markets are saying, that's funny, interesting, because the money's coming for the Raptors and the over, which is saying that Toronto's going to win the game, but Miami's going to control the pace. For what it's worth, over money has come. Again, the sharp money for Miami, Toronto. Last but not least, I'm not going to say I'm not surprised, but New Orleans isn't playing with pace. And yet we've seen Utah and New Orleans over the total there. That's as high as 243 right now. Last night, Utah and New Orleans was in the 241.5 range. So we've seen a little bit of over money there as well. Nothing crazy. But Chicago, Washington over, Miami, Toronto over, Utah, New Orleans over. That's all money that came overnight. And then we've seen that move hold through the morning. So the Sharps have played those 3 totals in particular over the number. I want to talk about fade the public, because every time I do it, I'm like, I don't fade the public in the NBA. I don't advise anyone else to fade the public in the NBA. And somehow it ends up as a bid on this show, and then it loses, and then I'm like, I'm not going to do it again, and then I do it again. And I'm like, I don't fade the public in the NBA. I don't tell anyone else to fade the public in the NBA. But here's the fade the public play. Last night it was Philadelphia against San Antonio. The Spurs were the public choice. Wemby got hurt, didn't matter. The Spurs still won and covered. The number looked a little bit short, and it was a little bit short at the eye test. Fade the public doesn't work in the NBA. I don't know if it works in any sport at this stage. Something that when I first moved to Vegas 30 years ago, you could pay attention. You had a Monday night game where with 80% on one side, it was a gimme to play the other. But, Monday Night Football I'm talking about. But NBA, I don't know that it's ever worked. I don't think it works now. And if you're trying to beat the NBA by going, I'm going to fade the public, I think there are better ways to beat the NBA, like watching this show, perhaps. So nothing to fade the public today. I shouldn't be using it for videos. And that's my mea culpa there. When it comes to impact injuries, yesterday we talked about Franz Wagner out for Orlando. They didn't miss him, blew out the Pistons. And that's notable. It's the first time the Pistons have really taken their foot off the gas. They've already clinched the number 1 seed. Detroit's loss last night. I'm going to read some of the quotes, but I'm not convinced that we're going to get much from the Pistons the final week of the regular season, especially if they, I don't know what's going on with Cade Cunningham right now, but if they try to get Cunningham back in, they're going to be bet against initially for sure. So one other thing I want to talk about on today's show that I haven't talked about on previous shows very much, I'm going to talk about my powering numbers and my powering numbers versus the market. And there's 2 that stand out tonight where there's a big difference between the betting markets and my numbers. The problem is, if you're going to bet the 2 that are pure powering plays, you're going to be on the Washington Wizards and the New Orleans and the Utah Jazz tonight, I should say. My number only has Chicago 2. The markets are at 6 for this ballgame. And when you look at the injury report for the Bulls, an injury report is disgusting for Chicago. Buzella's not playing. Collins not playing. Giddey is out tonight. Richards is out tonight. It's not a team that's cohesive even with those guys in the lineup. But that's firepower that Chicago will miss. And, of course, they don't play any defense to begin with. Then again, the Wizards, everyone's questionable for Washington, whether it's Trey Johnson or Kulebe or Champagne. There are multiple questionable guys for the Wizards, but the injury report for Chicago is ugly enough. And again, my number's only 2. The markets are at 6. I'm not convinced that the Bulls are a team I want to lay 6 points with right now. The other one that stands out is Utah. And again, this is New Orleans. The markets are 11 and a half on this game. Looking at the Odds Logic live odds screen, and I'm at 6.5, 7, and that's with Utah being priced amongst the worst teams in the league. Obviously, New Orleans isn't that much better, and it's not like the Pelicans are beating teams by margin. So, my powering numbers say there is value with the Wizards and the Utah Jazz. That being said, I personally did not bet either one of those squads. I'm not looking for reasons to put my money on the very worst teams in the NBA down the backstretch of the campaign, unless you see something like we saw from Indiana, like for the 2 weeks where the Pacers all of a sudden, hey, we're interested. We got our veterans playing. That's not the case for Washington or Utah. So I'll say that my powering numbers are wrong, not the market numbers are wrong, and we'll see how it plays out for tomorrow. One more thing to talk about on today's show. Lots of angles. But one more thing to talk about most assuredly. Before I do, $5 Tuesday, WagerTalk.com. Best bets in MLB. MLB's running good. Unfortunately, hoops has not been good the last couple of days, but I do not expect that to be a long-term problem. Great deal right now. $1.99 gets you every play, every day for the rest of the year. That's through Game 7 of the Finals. On my homepage, www.buzz.tc, or visit the website, WagerTalk.com. Angle of the day. Let's talk about this one because it's interesting, and maybe there's money to be made for it. That would be the Clippers and the Mavs for tonight. LA minus 11.5 in this ballgame. Really hasn't moved a whole lot from the opener. The angle in play, Dallas coming off a win. Now, they're 9-15 ATS full season, so they're bottom 5 in the NBA percentage-wise, 38% coming off a win full season, 37.5, 9-15 ATS. But that run has been worse of late. Dallas off a straight-up win, just 1-5 against the number since January. They haven't won a whole lot of games, and when they have, they've gotten bombed the game after. Last time they won, they lost by 30 to Minnesota in their next ball game. Dallas 11.5-point dogs against the Clips tonight in LA. I do not want the underdog in that one. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll do it again tomorrow. We appreciate the comments, the likes, and the follows. Have yourselves a great Betting Tuesday. Cheers.